So now we've looked at what it can mean on a convening level on Europe. I think we're a little bit stretched for time, so we might not have. No, sorry. I'd like to welcome Ian Gullen to the stage to share us a little bit about Scotland.
Okay.
Just Ian's
Do you want to go?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Casper. And thank you, Barcelona, for the opportunity to come and present to you today about what's happening in Scotland. It's really an honour to be here presenting at this fantastic event. I guess I was thinking about what my pitch would be coming today. I was kind of hesitant about showing lots of pictures about our sort of beautiful hills and mountains and glens and rivers and all the sort of things that are very iconic to our national brand and very important to our food and drink industry, particularly whiskey and fish, and how that kind of resonates, I guess, with this idea of the circular economy about managing those natural capital assets, like stocks and flows of resources, I guess, that we really need to protect. So that really resonates with us in terms of the circular economy, in terms of the bioeconomy. I also thought about pitching the idea that, you know, for years Scotland has, to some extent, punched above its weight in terms of contributions around inventions and various things like the television, the telephone, the steam engine and all that sort of things. And seeing the idea of the circular economy as a real opportunity for a new enlightenment about bringing ourselves back to the fore and how that chimes with our industrial heritage. I also just thought about pitching it the fact that we're kind of famous for our thriftiness, and we all really do like to make things last longer. So again, the circular economy very much chimes with that. But actually, I was out last night. When I arrived late, I went with a few friends to a bar in downtown Barcelona called Lulu. I don't know if people have been there. And it kind of reminded me of a famous Scottish singer, small in stature, but with a loud voice, who sang a very famous song in the 60s called Shout. So if you bear with me, I am going to shout. Okay, possibly not raise my voice, but I am going to shout about what we're doing in Scotland, because I think that's important for us in Scotland, but hopefully it's important for you, and I'll refer back to the shouting later on. Just before I talk about what we're actually doing in Scotland, I think it was useful just to sort of pitch the journey that we're on, where we've come from, a bit about Zero Waste Scotland. It's an organisation that's set up in 2010 by the Scottish Government, where it set out its visions for a zero waste society. It established us. We're about 110 people, 25 million euro turnover, very much focused on driving up recycling rates in Scotland, working with municipalities, the private sector and the third sector. We've invested in food waste collections all across Scotland. 75% of households now have access to a separate food waste collection. We've developed infrastructure for anaerobic digestion. We run a resource efficiency service for all businesses, looking at their energy, water and waste. That's identified about 180 million euros worth of savings in the first 2 years alone. We also have a brief looking at litter and, well, certainly adopting strategies to tackle litter and fly tipping, which I know there's more coming to the fore now when we think about the circular economy, and I know there's presentations tomorrow about the new plastic economy. We're very much looking at things like tackling marine litter. So we've been around and we've been developing, and very much our journey since 2010, as we call it, was developing this idea of a resource grid, trying to tackle this idea of what we can do with all those resources that we have in Scotland that are currently in the waste stream. How can we pull them out and actually drive them back into our economy, much like we do with energy, creating our own energy, renewable energy, and looking at our water systems as well. That was our kind of vision. And we've been very much still at the heart of what we do in terms of the recycling message and improving and working towards targets. But about 4 years ago, I shared a platform with Ellen MacArthur, who to some extent challenged me around some of the things that we were doing. Not so much we were doing them wrong, but perhaps the context. We were missing the opportunity and certainly missing the ambition to go further than we're already going. Yes, we've got targets for high recycling. Yes, we've got restrictions coming on landfill, a whole host of other measures that you anticipate in terms of waste regulation. But where we're missing the opportunity to look at real business opportunity. And we did start to analyse those things that Ellen had been talking about, and I think everybody realises the opportunities around higher value up the waste hierarchy in terms of reuse. Yes, we're losing value in Scotland. We export over 75% of the material we collect for recycling. So other than organics and glass, all the materials that we're collecting, and we're getting very, very good at those collection methodologies, both at household level and businesses, we're exporting. For every one job in the collection infrastructure, there's 8 jobs further up the supply chain in terms of the reprocessing, resupply and, of those materials back into the economy. To all intents and purposes, we were exporting jobs. And the recycling and the waste prevention activity we're doing was still very much at the back door of business. It was still something that wasn't hitting the boardroom level, and that was a key aspect of what Ellen MacArthur Foundation was really talking about. So we joined the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, where we were the first nation, not a region, the first nation to join the Ellen MacArthur CE 100, and we've been there participating in that and a number of other networks to learn and to share and to collaborate with not just with other nations and regions in Europe, but companies as well. So we drilled down into some of the things that have been talked about at the macro level in terms of Europe to see what those opportunities were for us in Scotland. So we looked at our key industries, the food and drink industry, the textile industry, the oil and gas industry, and we identified massive opportunities in terms of numbers. So even for the food and drink, we just looked at whiskey, beer and fishing, which are 3 natural things for us to look at. There's an opportunity cost of about 600 to 800 million euros a year if we adopt more circular practices rather than just think of them as linear. Manufacturing, we identified about 550 million euros worth of benefit if we started to think differently about our manufacturing processes and actually introduced remanufacturing into some of those businesses. Not only that, we identified over 5,000 jobs in manufacturing if we started to shift towards a more circular economy. Oil and gas, there's a massive decommissioning opportunity coming off the North Sea in terms of platforms and subsea infrastructure. All of that will be recycled. Well, the majority of that will be recycled, but it will be cut up on our quaysides and shipped off to other economies. Huge opportunity for us to look at not just reprocessing of those materials, but reusing and repurposing some of that equipment here in Scotland. All of that really made not just myself and others in my team set up, but the politicians and the government, and they were really striving to see how we could actually make some of that happen. We shouldn't forget the carbon numbers. They were really important as well. We identified an 11 million tons of equivalent CO2 saving by shifting to a circular economy with all the actions that we'd identified. That's just over 20% of our current emissions. It's quite significant when you start to think about, the global impact, not just of Scotland moving to a circular economy, but all our nations and regions shifting towards that. So it was very keen, so the Scottish Government decided to develop a strategy, and why not? We'll call it Making Things Last. The kilt is a symbol of the circular economy because most men don't own one, they hire one when they want to go out and parade or dance. And if you do own one, it's made of very durable and long-lasting material and it will last your lifetime. So it's very important the government went out in a conversation, it talked to business leaders, it engaged with business leaders, and there was a huge appetite for this idea of a circular economy at boardroom level. People started to see opportunities, people started to see business opportunities and job benefits. Even some of the companies we've been talking about were frustrated by the lack of durability in some of the products that they were using and wanted to start thinking more differently about the performance economy. We encourage young people to get involved in the debate as well as consumers around this idea of circular economy. And the circular economy strategy was launched earlier this year, and I would encourage you all, if you haven't read it already, to download that from the government website, which sets out not just their ambition, but some of the key actions that they're keen for us to take forward. So that's where we come in, and I guess what we're actually doing at the moment. So we've been doing some of this for some time. We've very luckily secured further funding from Europe structural funds to develop a circular economy program to accelerate the circular economy. So we have a number of other initiatives being funded by that, but one of the key things is an investment fund, £18 million or 80 million euros probably, equivalent over the next 3 years to invest in companies on the ground to develop more circular economy practices. We've a dedicated one-to-one support service for businesses who are interested in taking that shift forward. So this is focused on SMEs, which are 99% of what we have in Scotland. So we work directly with companies, some of which are already making that shift. We've all heard of Philips, who have got a leasing the light model. We've got a small SME in Scotland called Juice, which is doing the same. It has a model where it aims to lease light and light fittings to companies in Scotland. We have a number of other companies looking at byproducts of like the whiskey industry, turning that into high value fuel and other protein substitutes. So it's really, really caught fire in terms of working directly with those businesses. We've got the CE100 run by Ellen MacArthur. We've got a similar network in Scotland of like-minded businesses now, small, medium enterprises coming together, wanting to share and collaborate on a number of projects in Scotland and take those forward. We've funded the Scottish Institute for Remanufacturing with the Scottish Funding Council just a couple of years ago. It's the 4th such institute in the world, only the 4th such institute, looking at an interface between academic world and businesses in the manufacturing industry to look at how we can improve remanufacturing opportunities in Scotland. There's a number of over 20 projects there, working with about 60 companies engaged in remanufacturing in Scotland. Reuse and repair infrastructure, we've worked a lot with the third sector in particular to develop what's already available across Scotland. A number of organisations providing reuse and repair facilities. What we've worked with them through a programme called the Revolve programme to bring a degree of accreditation to them, raise their profile, work with them locally to promote what they're doing. So they have now an accessible framework across Scotland so people, consumers as well as businesses, can reuse or send stuff for reuse and also access reusable goods. We've also invested in repair skills, and there's a number of those organisations which now actually promote themselves as repair cafes, providing a resource for people to bring stuff to repair, but also to learn those skills. So skills are being now exchanged, and new people are now learning those new skills. We're also working closely with the skills development professionals in Scotland, not just at national level but at local level, about the idea of a skills academy. How can we invest in the skills that we're going to need, not just today, but more importantly, when this whole circular economy really takes off in 10, 15 years' time, what are the skills that we're going to need? So it's a bit like that backcasting exercise that a previous speaker was talking about. What are the skills we're going to need looking forward, and how can we introduce those skills both at secondary education, but also in tertiary education, working with universities. So one of the last things I'll just touch upon is this idea of the city and regional schemes. So key part of our work, and again coming from a conversation with a guy called Guido Bram from Amsterdam, was talking about how do they work in the region. So we went to Amsterdam and we saw what they were doing there. And traditionally for Zero Waste Scotland, we tended to work in sectors. We worked with the food and drink sector, we worked with the manufacturing sector. But he sort of suggested, why didn't we try a regional approach? Because that seemed to be getting some success in Amsterdam. So working with the Chamber of Commerce in Glasgow, business leaders in Glasgow, we decided to set up a project to look at what could be done in Glasgow at a city level and a regional level. So what came out of that was twofold. One, it was about working with business leaders in the city to take forward the idea of a circular economy, to talk about it, to understand what was possible. But more practically, we did what we called a city scan, which was really about drilling down to understand the flows of materials actually in the city. It's a very practical look at some of the obvious examples of where different materials could be aggregated differently or brought together differently to allow new business opportunities. That's just a very, very visual sense of what the type of project looked like. And again, there's a report on our website. We worked in partnership with Circular Economy in Amsterdam to bring this to fruition. What it really did was engage with business leaders about the opportunities and new businesses, to set up new businesses to make use of those materials, which were, to all intents and purposes, going out as waste, either to landfill or energy from waste. So there's a number of them that are now being taken forward, hopefully going to be taken forward in sort of a phase 3 working with Glasgow City Council. In fact, one of them, as you can imagine, we were very keen to take forward before the others, was the idea of making beer from bread, which I know is happening in other places, but this is particular working with Scottish bread rolls and turning them into a local brew. And that's something that I think we'll probably see being rolled out across Glasgow with a bit more intensity. So that programme is we're now looking for other cities. We're going to be working with Aberdeen, we're going to be working with Edinburgh. We're actually going to be looking, hopefully, to work with an island community as well to push that boundary a little bit further. Just to kind of sum up, one of the things that we're still sort of heading off a question that I might get is about one of our challenges, and it is around procurement. I still think procurement is the sleeping beauty of the circular economy. I've heard that said by a commissioner in the EU Commission, actually. It's not my line, but it definitely is. It's the opportunity that I think we're all sort of struggling with slightly. How can we shift both public procurement and procurement from big businesses? A lot of big businesses are looking at the circular economy, but how could they influence their own procurement? One of the interesting projects we're working with is a large what we call it, housing and care company. Looking at them, they're very switched on to this, and they're looking at working with their suppliers on the ground, small SMEs, about how they can actually start to procure performance rather than products from their supply chain. So again, it's not just public procurement that we can see as an opportunity, it's working with big business as well. And I do think that's a huge opportunity for us. Anyway, just to finish on the shout thing, I think it's not just about Scotland shouting about it. I think we all should shout about the circular economy. But more importantly, I think we should shout about collaboration. That should be the word we really, really shout about. Because I think you've heard from previous speakers as well, the importance of that. That's what really makes this happen. It's the fact that people will come together and collaborate, and people see the obvious benefit from doing that, both within their supply chains and without. We couldn't get to where we've got today without collaborating with Amsterdam, with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. We're now collaborating in Scotland with our enterprise agencies, our environment agencies, our academic institutions, our skills development people. We're all now collaborating like we've never collaborated before. And now we're seeing businesses on the ground through the work we've done in Glasgow, and we're now seeing the work we're doing in Aberdeen and other places, how businesses are coming together in this. So that's the thing I want to leave with you in terms of shouting. Shout about the circular economy, but shout about collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. I know that from a European perspective, you guys have done quite a bit. Maybe just one. Is there one example that you can give since the implementation of the strategy that you say that's what we're really proud of, that has been showing some of the opportunities already?
I think the Institute of Remanufacturing is just a real success. I think for us, certainly at Zero Waste Scotland, it was a new. To be honest, we didn't really have a relationship with an academic institution. So the institute is embedded in Strathclyde University in Glasgow and a number of other universities involved in it as well. And going to them and working with them, they had the vision, they could see how this was working, and they brought the companies in. And for us, we can sit where at the sort of national level and have these ideas, but these people got that together, they brought the businesses together, they created the interface, and they're now successfully working directly with that number of businesses and bringing projects and moving that forward. I think if you see that, it's easy to talk about it, but that's it starting to happen now.
All right, thanks a lot. Ian Golland, Zero Waste Scotland.